Salesforce net income is looking very healthy compared to last year. Looking under the hood of the cash flow statement, depreciation is still steadily rising, while something called cost capitalized to obtain revenue contracts is lower than it has been in the last 3 years. So it looks like we're looking at a close to perfect software subscription company. I'm excited. Make sure to stick around until the end to see the Sage Seeds Artificial Intelligence ranking. Follow me on Instagram to see hints about future episodes. Let's dive in so that your wisdom can blossom. I've been reading through the notes of the financial office until something caught my eye in a section called Business Combinations. This is just a helpful history of the big acquisitions that Salesforce has been doing over the last couple of years. Companies like Traction Sales, Slack Technologies, and Acumen Solutions. This history helps us understand what's happening in Section 8, where we see that Salesforce is hitting a peak in terms of the value of the acquired developed technology and the customer relationships from these acquisitions of the last couple of years. All the gross profit, all the revenue, the lower expenses, the healthy cash flow statement, all that can be explained by very healthy acquisitions that are now getting to the later stages of their integration. The expected future amortization expense for fiscal 2025, 2026, so on and so on, is due to decrease like clockwork from now on, unless they're able to find future acquisitions. So yes, next year, cash flow will be boosted by 1.6 billion. The boost to cash flow will be less than $1 billion 3 years from now. This begs the question, how much of the growth we're seeing in our first impression is organic Salesforce growth versus benefits from acquisitions? Coming to the management's discussion section, management describes that the sources of revenues that are organic to Salesforce are casually referred to as cloud services. So let's Control F for cloud services. For too long, we see that the auditor actually took issue with how cloud services is defined under revenue recognition. Significant judgment may be required by the company in deciding what is or isn't a cloud service. And kind of in line with what the auditor was complaining about, none of the mentions of the word cloud service really explain what that is versus everything else. However, cloud services does take us to this cost capitalized to obtain revenue contracts. The good news is that even though Salesforce isn't telling us what is revenue from the core business versus revenue from acquisitions, it does seem like any of the organic Salesforce revenue is created at the same time as one of these capitalized costs. This allows us to come back to the cash flow statement and pay more attention to this row, amortization of costs capitalized to obtain revenue contracts. Since these two rows together describe what the business has to do to earn its revenue, and we can quickly calculate that about 1/3 of the sum of these two rows is in the cost capitalized row. Salesforce has actually slightly revealed that roughly 1/3 of its revenue is organic, and 2/3 can be thought of as revenue obtained through acquisitions. At this point, I can step in and say that that's entirely a reasonable amount, but a little bit on the high side. Personally, whenever you have more than half of your revenue coming from acquisitions, you're kind of being aggressive with that strategy, and you have to start managing all these different brands that you're buying, and it can get complicated to even know who your customers are after a while. Some careful eyes might have noticed that there's also a cost capitalized to obtain revenue contracts row in the working capital. And according to this row, the organic business is slowing down relative to last year. Slowing down in the sense that Salesforce actually spent less cash obtaining organic revenue. However, coming back to the income statement and noticing now that marketing and sales was the biggest change in this whole operating expenses section, and it was a decrease in how much was being spent. We can actually combine all this together to understand that Salesforce is spending less on marketing and sales for its core Salesforce business, most likely because some of the acquisitions have been so successful that it probably makes more sense to spend marketing dollars on those acquired brands rather than the core Salesforce brand itself. More people are going to recognize names like Slack than names like Salesforce anyway. Looking at the earnings per share for the last 3 years, while it's not uncommon to have a business that's all about acquiring other businesses, I would say it's uncommon to see a group of people do it as successfully as Salesforce seems to be. Going from 21 cents of earnings per share to over $4 in earnings per share is exactly what it looks like when you spend a lot of money on buying a company and then that new company helps you grow your business as a result. Is it more like juggling than a stable economic empire? Sure, I could see the argument for that, but juggling or not, if Salesforce is stringing together profitable businesses, then none of us should be surprised if they profit today and continue to profit into the future. So let's get ready to see the Sage Seeds Artificial Intelligence ranking, remembering that the rankings go from the 1st percentile to the 100th percentile, where the closer to first is better. What ranking do you expect? Salesforce is ranked in the 56th percentile in value for the 2023 season, a pretty middling average score. Do you agree or disagree with this ranking? I'd love it if in the comments we could get discussions going about how to manage customers, what's some of the most helpful software you've ever seen. Does anyone have any stories in which software was actually making things more complicated than it needed to be? Also, like and subscribe so that I can continue to make videos just like this one. And thank you for watching until the end.